The starship Alaris had once been a symbol of hope. It was sleek, fast, and designed to explore the uncharted corners of the galaxy. Captain Leora Vashti had trusted in it, and more importantly, in the alliances she believed existed among the stars. She had believed that the galaxy was a place where civilizations could cooperate, where friendships could be formed, and where those in danger would never be left behind. But hope, she was about to learn, was a fragile thing. It began with a routine mission, one that seemed simple on the surface. Alaris had been sent to deliver medical supplies to a distant colony on the edge of known space. The crew had been cheerful, humming songs in the mess hall, sharing stories from home, and joking about the odd creatures they had seen in faraway systems. Leora had walked among them, smiling, feeling the warmth of human connection. She had not expected betrayal. She had not expected the galaxy to turn its face against them. The attack came without warning. The Varric, a merciless faction known for leaving nothing alive in their wake, had been lying in ambush. Sensors picked up their fleet too late, massive black ships that seemed to swallow light. Leora shouted orders, but it was chaos. Explosions tore through the Alaris. Alarms screamed, and crew members were thrown across the corridors by the force of the impact. Smoke filled the cabin. Fire licked the walls. In that moment, Leora understood something terrible. They were alone. The engines failed. Communications with nearby systems went dark. The crew scrambled to the escape pods, and Leora's hand shook as she watched her friends vanish into the void. Lieutenant Marin, her closest officer, grabbed her hand. "We'll make it," he said, though she could hear the tremor in his voice. But when the pod doors closed, Leora found herself spinning alone in the darkness, drifting farther from the ship she had once called home. Days passed in cold silence. Leora rationed her food and water carefully, trying not to let despair consume her. She floated among the stars, staring out at endless blackness, listening only to the soft hum of the pod systems. She tried to remember how to stay calm, how to focus on survival, but every night brought nightmares of burning ships, screaming crew members, and the Varric's cruel laughter echoing in her mind. She sent out distress signals, knowing it was a long shot. She repeated the messages again and again, praying that someone, anyone, would hear her. But the galaxy had abandoned them. No fleets came. No friends answered. The stars seemed indifferent, cold, and endless. For the first time, Leora felt what it truly meant to be utterly alone. Then, on the 5th day, a faint signal appeared on her instruments. At first, she thought it was a glitch, a trick of her exhausted mind. But the signal persisted, stronger, clearer. It came from a blue and green planet far from known war zones. Earth. She had heard stories of it. Some called humans reckless, unpredictable, and wild. Others whispered that humanity had little place in the galactic order. And yet here was Earth, responding to a cry for help from strangers it had never met. Leora's heart ached with disbelief. Could it really be true? Could a civilization, so far away and so underestimated, actually care? She activated the pod's comm system. "This is Captain Leora Vashti of the Alaris. We are stranded. We need aid. Please respond." Moments passed, and then a calm, firm voice came through the speakers. "We read you, Captain Vashti. Help is on the way. Hold your position. Do not give up." Tears filled her eyes. She had not cried since the attack, had not allowed herself to feel weakness in the face of terror. Now the tears were unstoppable. She whispered to the empty pod, "They are coming. They will save us." Even as hope flickered back to life, fear remained. Leora knew the Varric had tracked them. Every moment spent waiting for rescue was a moment where danger could strike. She checked the pod's instruments repeatedly, listening for the telltale signs of enemy ships. Every blip on the radar made her heart race, and yet she clung to the promise of the Earth signal, like a lifeline thrown across a stormy sea. As she floated in the vast emptiness, she thought of her crew, some lost, some waiting with her in other pods. She thought of the dreams they had shared, the laughter they had exchanged, and the moments of quiet wonder beneath alien stars. And she promised herself that she would survive, not just for her own sake, but for them, for the crew that had trusted her, for the lives that had been abandoned by a galaxy too cruel to care. Somewhere out there, she knew humanity was coming, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Leora allowed herself to believe. The stars were still cold, the void still vast, but a tiny light, warm and steady, shone from Earth. And in that light, Captain Leora Vashti found the first spark of hope that had not been extinguished. Captain Leora Vashti floated in her small escape pod, the hum of its life support systems her only companion. Each passing hour stretched endlessly. The stars around her were silent, indifferent, endless. She had survived the attack, but survival alone was not enough. Her crew was scattered in escape pods across the void, their fate unknown. Every blip she saw on her scanner could be a friend, or a Varric hunter closing in. Fear gnawed at her chest, and yet she forced herself to act. She had to send more signals. She had to keep hope alive. The distress beacon of the Alaris had not stopped broadcasting. Leora repeated the messages, careful to encode their location, their condition, and the number of survivors still alive. She spoke into the comm, her voice trembling but firm. "We are stranded. We are wounded. We need help. Please respond." For hours there was nothing. Silence stretched like an ocean, cold and crushing. She stared at the blinking lights on her console, the tiny indicators of life, and felt a bitter loneliness settle in her bones. She thought of Lieutenant Marin, of the engineers who had laughed at her jokes, of the young cadets who had looked at the stars with wide, innocent eyes. Were they still alive? Were they floating in other pods like her? Or had the Varric found them first? Leora pressed herself to remain focused. She rationed her water, ate only when absolutely necessary, and kept the pod's systems running. Each day she forced herself to step outside the small compartment of fear she had built in her mind, to scan the void, to check the instruments, to remind herself that she was still alive. She counted the days in her head, 1, 2, 3, each one heavier than the last. On the 5th day, exhaustion threatened to consume her. She floated in the dark, staring at the stars, wondering if anyone even remembered her, if the galaxy cared at all. And then faintly at first a signal appeared on her console, a flicker almost invisible. She leaned closer, eyes straining at the tiny indicator. It was not a glitch. It was a real response. Her heart leapt. She double-checked the coordinates. The signal came from a blue and green planet far from the main trade routes and the war zones of known space. Earth. She had heard stories of humans. Some called them reckless, wild, and unpredictable. Others said they were clever, determined, and stubborn. But she had never imagined they would answer a cry for help from the edges of the galaxy. "Hello?" she whispered into the comm. Her voice cracked, but she spoke again, louder this time. "This is Captain Leora Vashti of the Alaris. We are stranded. We need immediate assistance. Please respond." Moments passed. The silence felt eternal. Then the calm, firm voice returned. "Captain Vashti, we read you. Help is on the way. Hold your position. Do not give up." Leora's hands shook. Tears blurred her vision as relief surged through her. She clutched the console, her knuckles white. She whispered to the empty pod, "They are coming. We are not alone." Even with the promise of rescue, fear lingered. The Varric had not forgotten them. Every blip on the scanner, every shadow in the distance could be a predator closing in. Leora ran simulations in her mind, trying to predict the enemy's moves, to plan her crew's survival. But even as she calculated, a small, stubborn spark of hope burned inside her. Humans were coming. They had not turned away. She thought of her scattered crew, imagining each pod drifting through the void. She sent them encrypted signals, hoping that they were receiving the same message, hoping that they too could hold on to hope. "Help is coming," she repeated silently like a prayer. "We are not alone. We will survive." Time stretched. The pod drifted through strange nebulae and silent asteroid fields. She had long lost track of days and nights, but the signal remained steady, a pulse of warmth against the cold void. Every flicker reminded her that someone cared, that someone had not forgotten them. Her thoughts turned inward. She remembered why she had joined the fleet, the promise of discovery, of exploring the unknown, of protecting life wherever it could be found. She remembered the faces of her crew, their laughter and courage, and she realized that survival was no longer just about living. It was about keeping that promise alive, keeping the hope alive, until someone came for them, and then faintly, the pod sensors detected something new, a distant shimmer, small and glowing, growing larger with every passing moment. Earth's fleet. Leora's heart raced. Relief, hope, and fear collided in her chest. They were coming for her crew, for the abandoned among the stars. She floated in the pod, staring at the approaching lights, unable to believe that after so many days of darkness, warmth, life, and help were finally reaching out to them. For the first time in nearly a week, she allowed herself to smile. The galaxy had been cruel, the Varric relentless, but Earth had not forgotten. And in that thought, Captain Leora Vashti found a fragile but unbreakable hope. No matter what came next, she would survive. She would see her crew again. And the stars, which had once felt so empty and cold, now held a promise that they were not alone, and that the universe still had room for mercy, courage, and humanity. Captain Leora Vashti's eyes never left the viewport. The tiny flicker she had seen hours ago had grown into something immense. Ships, large, powerful, and unlike anything she had ever seen, cut through the darkness of space with perfect precision. The human fleet had arrived. Every ship seemed alive with purpose, glowing faintly as though the stars themselves recognized their determination. Leora's heart pounded in her chest. Relief was immediate, overwhelming, and yet fear still lingered. The Varric could be nearby, waiting for a chance to strike. She adjusted the pod's controls, keeping her small vessel steady as the enormous human ships maneuvered into position. They formed a protective circle around the pods, their weapon systems glowing but unmoving, a silent promise of defense. Then, one of the largest ships opened its hangar doors. A smaller craft detached, gliding gracefully toward Leora's pod. She felt her breath catch. She had expected warships to blast through the enemy, not to reach out and rescue those abandoned in the void. And yet this ship moved with careful precision, closing the distance as if it had known she was there all along. Captain Vashti, a calm, firm voice said through the pod's comm system, "This is Commander Rhea Solis of Earth. You are safe now. We are retrieving you and your crew. Please prepare for boarding." Leora's hands trembled as she replied, "Thank you. Thank you so much." Her words caught in her throat. She had not cried for days, but now tears streamed freely down her face. Relief, exhaustion, and disbelief collided into one overwhelming emotion. The docking procedure was swift but careful. Human engineers and medics moved with precision, securing the pod and helping Leora step onto the ship. The moment she set foot on the metal floor, warmth surrounded her. Heat from the engines, yes, but also warmth from the humans themselves. Their expressions were serious yet kind. No one asked questions. No one doubted her story. They simply cared. She looked around and saw other pods being retrieved. Crew members emerged slowly, some dazed, some weak, but all alive. Lieutenant Marin was among them. He ran to her and they embraced tightly, relief so strong that neither could speak at first. Around them, medics offered blankets, water, and food. Leora noticed the care in every movement. These humans had faced countless dangers, yet they treated survivors not as numbers, but as lives, each one precious, each one valued. Even from orbit, Leora could see the blue and green of Earth. The planet seemed impossibly vibrant, full of life, warmth, and promise. She realized that this world, which many in the galaxy had dismissed as unpredictable, reckless, or insignificant, was capable of something far greater than power or conquest. Humans cared. Humans saved lives, even when it was inconvenient, even when it was dangerous, even when the universe seemed indifferent. And danger was not far away. Sensors indicated that Varric scouts had detected the human fleet. The crew tensed, ready for combat. Leora expected the humans to act like any other species in the galaxy. Strike hard, strike fast, and leave no survivors. But instead they moved with strategy and precision. Shields rose around the fleet, but there was no panic. Humans evacuated pods and civilians first, placing the protection of life above all else. Leora watched in awe. They fought not for glory, not for vengeance, but for survival and mercy. The Varric hesitated when they saw the human fleet. They had expected easy prey, scattered and defenseless. Instead, they found themselves facing ships that moved with flawless coordination, and crews that refused to abandon the weak. Leora felt a strange warmth in her chest. The humans were not just rescuers, they were defenders. They would not allow the abandoned to die. Inside the human ship, Leora was led to a recovery bay. Medics checked her for injuries while engineers restored her pod's data. Everything was efficient, professional, yet deeply compassionate. Every question they asked came from concern, not suspicion. Every action, every word reassured her that she and her crew were truly safe for the first time in what felt like forever. She looked around at her fellow survivors. Alien species once terrified were beginning to smile. Small gestures, sharing a meal, laughing quietly, helping one another, filled the space with life again. Leora realized something profound. Safety was not just about armor or weapons. It was about being seen, being valued, and being protected simply for being alive. Humans understood this. For the first time since the ambush, Leora allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for the future. The stars had been cruel, the galaxy indifferent, and the Varric merciless. Yet here was a planet that refused to abandon life. Here were humans who had reached across impossible distances to save strangers. As she looked out at the fleet, at the pods slowly being collected, at her reunited crew, Leora whispered to herself, "We are not alone anymore. We are not abandoned." The human commander, Rhea Solis, walked past, catching Leora's eye. She offered a small, reassuring smile, a silent promise that Earth would keep them safe. In that moment, Leora understood the truth that would stay with her forever. Humans did not just survive. Humans saved others, and in doing so, they became something extraordinary, a beacon of hope among the stars. The Alaris crew was safe, and the journey of recovery, of trust, and of new beginnings had only just begun. But for the first time in a long time, Leora believed that there was still a place in the galaxy for life, for courage, and for humanity. The survivors of the Alaris stood on the surface of Earth for the first time. The air was warm, filled with scents of forests and oceans, smells they had not experienced in the sterile corridors of their starship or the void of space. Leora Vashti breathed deeply, savoring the sensation of gravity pressing against her body, of wind brushing her skin, of sunlight warming her face. For the first time in days, perhaps even weeks, she felt alive. The humans moved among them with calm efficiency. Medics checked injuries, engineers helped repair damaged pods, and guides led the alien survivors to temporary quarters. Everywhere there was a sense of purpose, but also compassion. Leora noticed how they treated each survivor as if they were the most important being in the universe, not because they were exotic or valuable, but simply because they were alive. Some of the alien crew could not stop staring at everything. Children of strange species laughed as they tasted fruit for the first time. Adults touched trees, grass, and flowing water, marveling at how life could feel so simple yet so profound. Leora watched them and felt something stir in her chest, a fragile, growing hope that life could exist beyond fear and betrayal. She walked with Lieutenant Marin through the recovery area. "I never thought we'd make it this far," he said quietly, looking at the humans bustling around them. "I thought the galaxy had forgotten us," Leora nodded. "So did I, but they didn't, humans. They didn't forget. Even in the safety of Earth, fear lingered like a shadow. The Varric were still out there, hunting, relentless, cruel. Leora knew that this temporary haven could be shattered at any moment. But she also saw that humans did not wait for fear to paralyze them. They trained, prepared, and planned, yet never lost their calm. They moved with a quiet confidence that inspired courage. Over the next few days, survivors began to rebuild their spirits. Engineers and scientists from both human and alien backgrounds worked together in workshops and labs, exchanging knowledge and ideas. Soldiers trained alongside humans, learning tactics and strategies, but also witnessing a mindset that was as disciplined as it was fearless. Leora noticed something extraordinary. Humans fought not for glory, not for power, but for life itself. Even those who had been hardest hit by the ambush, the young cadets. The injured, the fearful, began to smile. They began to hope. Leora watched children of alien species laughing in the sunlight, their parents standing nearby, faces relaxed for the first time in months. These small moments of joy were powerful. They were a reminder that life could continue, that the horrors of the past did not have to define the future. Leora herself began to rest, to eat without worry, to sleep without fear. But she remained vigilant. Every now and then she would glance at the skies, scanning for movement, remembering the Varric threat that still loomed. She trained her mind not to panic, to prepare for the worst, but never to lose hope. One evening, she joined Commander Rhea Solis in a quiet observation room. The sun was setting, casting golden light over forests, mountains, and oceans. Leora asked, "Why us? Why did Earth answer our call when so many others ignored it?" Rhea looked at her, her eyes steady. "Because life matters. Every life matters. We've been abandoned before, too. We know what it feels like. We couldn't turn away from you, just as we wouldn't turn away from anyone else in need. Leora felt tears welling in her eyes. Words could not express the gratitude and wonder she felt. For the first time, she understood that humans were not just survivors, they were guardians. They fought, they endured, they sacrificed, not for themselves alone, but for others, for the helpless, for hope. In the following days, the survivors began to take part in Earth's routines. Engineers repaired equipment, scientists shared discoveries, and soldiers trained alongside their human counterparts. The exchange of knowledge was mutual. Aliens learned from humans, humans learned from aliens. Every small interaction, every shared meal or conversation, built trust and belonging. Leora walked among her crew and the humans, watching friendships form, alliances strengthen, and laughter return. She realized that hope was not just a feeling, it was a choice. In a galaxy that had abandoned them, they chose to trust again. In a world that could have ignored them, they were welcomed. Even in this fragile peace, Leora knew the Varric could return. But for now, among the forests, rivers, and cities of Earth, the survivors felt something extraordinary. A fragile, shining hope that life could continue, that bonds could be formed, and that even in the vast dark galaxy, they had found a place to belong. For the first time since the ambush, Captain Leora Vashti allowed herself to believe fully. They had survived not just physically but in spirit. Earth had given them more than rescue. It had given them a chance to live again, to hope again, to trust again. And hope, she knew, was the most powerful force of all. Life on Earth had begun to feel real for the survivors. The alien crew of the Alaris laughed again, played in sunlight, and learned to trust. Children ran through forests, curious about every leaf, every flower, every living thing. Adults explored cities, marveled at technology, and shared stories with humans who treated them as equals. For a brief moment, Leora Vashti allowed herself to believe that the nightmare of space, of betrayal and loss, was behind them. But the shadows of the past never disappear entirely. One morning, Earth's sensors detected movement in the void. Leora was in the observation deck when the alert sounded. Her stomach sank. The Varric, the same merciless faction that had destroyed the Alaris, scattered her crew and left them to die in the darkness of space, was coming. A war fleet approached at impossible speeds, their dark ships cutting through the void like knives. Panic would have been natural, but Leora noticed something extraordinary about the humans around her. There was no fear in their eyes. There was only calm, focused determination. The fleet was prepared. Shields were raised, weapons systems powered up, and warning signals sent out. Earth had anticipated this. They had always anticipated the worst. Leora gathered her crew in the command center. "They're here," she said, trying to steady her voice. "The Varric are coming." The young cadets trembled, some hiding behind their parents. Leora put a hand on the shoulder of the nearest one. "We've survived before," she whispered. "We can survive again. Trust them. Trust Earth." The humans moved quickly, evacuating vulnerable areas first, securing civilians and the recovered pods. Soldiers trained alongside alien crew members, coordinating seamlessly despite language differences and different combat styles. Leora watched as humans guided them, teaching them not only how to fight but how to think, how to plan, and how to remain calm when terror threatened to overwhelm them. The Varric fleet entered Earth's system. Massive black ships loomed like predators, their weapons glowing ominously. Many of the survivors froze, remembering the destruction they had faced in deep space. But Earth did not hesitate. Human ships moved like a single organism, forming defensive lines, shielding the planet and positioning themselves between the Varric and the pods. Leora's heart pounded as she watched. Explosions began to light up the darkness of space, but even in the chaos, humans remained composed. They did not fire recklessly. They did not act from anger or fear. Every strike, every maneuver was calculated, precise, and protective. Leora realized something she had never fully understood before. Humans were not just fighters. They were defenders, protectors of life, no matter the cost. She turned to Lieutenant Marin, who whispered, "They're incredible. They really don't give up on anyone, do they?" Leora shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "No, that's what makes them different. That's what makes them human." Amid the battle, Leora's crew worked alongside humans, assisting where they could. Some repaired small vessels damaged by the Varric. Others guided civilians to safety. Children clung to their parents, but even they watched in awe as humans moved with courage and precision. They were learning what it meant to be part of something greater, something unyielding. The Varric tried to break through, but every attack was met with organized resistance. Even when a human ship was hit, crews abandoned their stations temporarily only to return stronger, fighting with renewed determination. Leora felt a mixture of fear and awe. She had seen humans survive wars, disasters, and betrayals, but this was extraordinary. They were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for everyone, including those the galaxy had abandoned. Hours passed, and slowly the tide began to turn. The Varric fleet faltered, disorganized by the humans' coordination and resolve. Leora realized that even the mightiest enemies could be overcome, not by fear or force alone, but by courage, strategy, and an unbreakable commitment to protect life. When the battle ended, the Varric retreated into the darkness, leaving only silence and debris behind. Leora and her crew floated in the observation deck, stunned and exhausted, yet alive. Humans were tending to their own ships, repairing damage, checking on everyone, and ensuring that no one was left behind. Leora turned to Commander Rhea Solis, who was quietly supervising the recovery. "You saved us." "Again?" Leora said, her voice thick with emotion. Solis smiled, calm and steady. "No one is abandoned on Earth, not now, not ever. You were lost among the stars, but you are home here. That's all that matters." For the first time in weeks, Leora felt the weight of fear lift, replaced with a fragile but undeniable hope. The Varric might return, and the galaxy might still be cruel, but here on this planet life was cherished. Survival was more than existing. It was protected, nurtured, and valued. Leora looked out at the stars, knowing that danger could come again at any time. But she also knew that, as long as humans stood together with those they chose to protect, no darkness would ever truly consume them. Earth had not just rescued them, it had taught them a lesson that would stay with them forever. Courage, compassion, and loyalty could light even the deepest void. And in that moment, the survivors began to believe not only in survival, but in something stronger, hope that could never be abandoned again. The Varric fleet had regrouped and returned with even greater numbers. From the observation deck, Captain Leora Vashti could see them approaching like a storm, black ships blotting out the stars, engines glowing with menace. Her heart raced, but fear was tempered with a strange, steady calm. She had witnessed humans at work before. They were fearless, precise, and relentless in protecting life. And now she understood. She would survive because they refused to fail. Commander Rhea Solis stood at the helm of the fleet's lead ship, her eyes scanning every blip on the tactical display. She did not shout. She did not panic. Every command was deliberate, concise, and measured. "Prepare defensive lines," she said. "Evacuate the pods. Protect the civilians. No one is left behind." Leora watched in awe as human ships moved with perfect coordination, forming shields around the scattered escape pods and civilian vessels. They positioned themselves strategically, anticipating every possible maneuver of the Varric. And yet their focus was not only on combat, it was on protection. Every move was designed to save lives. The first attack hit suddenly. Explosions lit the void, throwing debris and fire across space. A smaller human vessel took the brunt of the assault, shuddering violently as its shields held. Leora instinctively gripped the railing, but no panic surged in her chest. Humans remained composed, calmly issuing orders and repairing damage even under fire. From the pods, survivors watched with wide eyes. Some had known only terror and abandonment for weeks, but now they saw a different kind of power: courage without cruelty, strength without vengeance. Leora realized that this was what made humans extraordinary. They did not fight to dominate. They fought to protect, to rescue, and to uphold life in the face of darkness. As the battle raged, Leora and Lieutenant Marin were called to assist in coordinating the evacuation of pods. They guided frightened aliens to safety, using every skill they had learned on Earth in the short time since arrival. Even the young cadets, who had been terrified at first, followed instructions with determination, their confidence growing as they witnessed the humans' unwavering bravery. The Varric pressed harder, desperate to break through. Massive ships unleashed volleys of energy, attempting to scatter the fleet. Human ships absorbed the attacks with precise maneuvers and coordinated counterstrikes. Even when casualties occurred, crews abandoned their stations only to return, undeterred and ready to continue. Leora felt a surge of emotion watching it all. Humans were not just warriors, they were guardians of hope. She realized the truth that had been slowly forming in her mind. The galaxy might betray, the stars might be cruel, but humans had a way of fighting that transcended survival. They fought for something greater, life itself. Hours passed, and slowly the tide of battle began to turn. Human ships executed flanking maneuvers that the Varric had not anticipated. The fleet's coordination forced the enemy into positions where retreat was impossible. And yet, even in victory, humans did not strike with vengeance. They captured the Varric ships, disarmed them, and tended to the wounded. Leora watched, astonished. No other species she had known would spare an enemy after such destruction. She turned to Marin, whispering, This is what makes them different. They are not just fighting. They are saving everyone, including those who tried to destroy them. Marin nodded, eyes wide. I've never seen anything like it. They are extraordinary. When the last Varric ship disengaged, retreating into the void, a hush fell over the observation deck. Debris floated silently in the aftermath of the battle. Survivors, exhausted but alive, began to realize the depth of what had occurred. Humans had not just defended Earth, they had defended the abandoned, the weak, the helpless. They had given life a chance to continue against impossible odds. Leora stepped forward and looked at Commander Solus. You saved all of us, she said, voice trembling. You didn't just fight. You protected everyone, even them. Solus gave a small, calm smile. We protect life. That is what Earth does. That is what humans do. You were abandoned among the stars, Captain, but not here. Here no one is left behind. That is our choice. Leora felt tears run down her face. She had seen the galaxy's cruelty, experienced betrayal and terror, and endured loss beyond measure. But now she understood something powerful. Humans had redefined what it meant to survive. Survival was no longer just existence. Survival was protection, courage, and compassion, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. In the days after the battle, Earth's crews repaired the damage, tended to survivors, and rebuilt the pods. Leora and her team walked among humans and alien survivors, helping, learning, and sharing in the quiet triumph of life preserved. The sky was still vast, the galaxy still dangerous, but for the first time in weeks there was a sense of safety, trust, and belonging. Leora looked out at the stars, thinking of the Varric, of the void, and of the emptiness that had once surrounded her. And yet she no longer felt alone. She had seen what humans could do. She had seen courage that defied logic, strategy that outmatched enemies, and hearts that would not abandon the helpless. Earth had not just saved them, it had shown them a way to hope, to fight and to trust again. And in that realization, Captain Leora Vashti understood the truth she would carry forever. Humanity was not just a survivor in the galaxy. Humanity was a light in the darkness, a protector of life, and a force that could turn the tide even against the most merciless enemies. The battle for the abandoned was won. But more than that, life had been defended, and for Leora, for her crew, and for countless others, that was the greatest victory of all. The battle was over. Silence settled across space, broken only by the quiet hum of repaired human and alien ships. Captain Leora Vashti stood on the observation deck of the human flagship, her eyes sweeping across the recovered pods, the alien crew, and the humans who had saved them all. For the first time since the Varric attack, she allowed herself to breathe fully, unafraid, unbroken. The survivors moved through Earth like a new family learning to live together. Children of alien species laughed freely in green fields, tasting fruits, chasing birds, and feeling the warmth of grass beneath their feet. Adults explored cities, exchanging stories with humans, learning, sharing, and discovering that even in the vast and dangerous galaxy, life could still feel safe, joyful, and meaningful. Leora watched them, her chest swelling with emotion. Hope was alive here, and it was stronger than anything the galaxy had tried to crush. Humans walked among them, always attentive, always kind. Medics checked on the injured. Engineers repaired delicate ships, and guides taught the aliens how to adapt to their new home. Every gesture was simple but profound. A hand offered to steady a child, a gentle smile for the worried, a quiet word of encouragement. Leora realized that what made humans extraordinary was not only their courage in battle, but their ability to care deeply, even in the darkest times. Lieutenant Marin approached her, holding a small alien child who had refused to eat for days after the attack. The boy clung to Marin, but Marin's calm, patient presence encouraged him to try a piece of fruit. "It's amazing," Marin whispered. "They've lost so much, and yet they can feel safe again. Because of humans." Leora nodded, tears brimming. "Because Earth doesn't abandon anyone, not now, not ever." Even as peace returned, the survivors could not forget the void. Leora thought of the Varric fleet, still out there, still a threat to others in the galaxy. But she also knew that Earth had proven something greater than fear. The humans had faced impossible odds, and they had acted not with anger, but with protection, courage, and strategy. They had saved the helpless. They had defended the abandoned. And in doing so, they had shown that even in a universe filled with cruelty, there were those willing to stand for life itself. The alien survivors began to help each other rebuild, not just physically, but emotionally. Bonds formed quickly between humans and aliens. Shared meals became lessons, laughter became music, and trust grew like a fragile flower in fertile soil. Leora saw soldiers training side by side, engineers collaborating, children learning together. Earth had not just rescued them, it had given them a family. One evening, Leora stood with Commander Rhea Solis on a hill overlooking the ocean. The sun set in brilliant streaks of orange and gold. "We were abandoned among the stars," Leora said softly. "But you welcomed us. You saved us when no one else would. Why?" Solis looked at her with calm certainty. "Because life matters, Captain. Every life matters. We've been abandoned too, once or twice, by the galaxy, by circumstances. That's why we will never turn away from someone in need. You are alive, and that is enough. We protect that always." Leora felt a wave of gratitude so strong it left her breathless. In the midst of loss, fear, and betrayal, she had found something extraordinary. A species that could fight with unmatched courage, yet remain compassionate and merciful. Humans were not just survivors, they were guardians, heroes, and friends to all who were abandoned. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal. The alien crew adapted to Earth's rhythms, discovering that safety was not something fragile, but something humans could provide even in the darkest times. Children learned languages, played together, and shared dreams of exploration, discovery, and adventure. Adults repaired ships, studied Earth's technology, and taught humans the knowledge of distant worlds. Leora walked through the recovering base, seeing hope in every glance, every smile. Her crew had regained their spirit, their laughter, and their sense of purpose. The galaxy outside might still be harsh, but inside this place they had found a sanctuary. And not just a sanctuary, they had found belonging, family, and the certainty that someone would always be there to protect them. Finally, Leora stood again on the observation deck, gazing at the stars that had once seemed so cruel, so empty. She thought of the void, of the pods scattered, of the friends who had not survived, and she felt a deep, quiet understanding. The galaxy might abandon many, but humans, Earth, would not. Humans were a force of life, a light in the darkness and a protector of the helpless. She whispered to herself, "We were lost, but now we are found." Commander Solis came to stand beside her. "The galaxy is vast, Captain, but Earth has proven one thing. Life can always find protection, courage can always rise, and hope can never be abandoned." Leora smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then let the stars know. Let everyone know what humans can do. They don't just survive, they save, they defend, they care, and they never leave anyone behind." As the sun set over Earth, casting a golden glow across oceans and forests, the survivors of the Alaris understood something profound. They had been abandoned among the stars. Yes, but they had been welcomed by humanity, and in that embrace they found not just survival, but a new beginning, a new family, and a future filled with hope. In the vastness of the galaxy, Earth shone as a beacon of courage, compassion, and life itself. And for the first time in a long time, the lost felt truly found.